Originally, this video was supposed to come out of nowhere. We haven't seen from Pirate Software. He has not gotten himself in any drama for over 6 months at this point. Fortunately for me and all you viewers, he did end up shitting the bed and doing some dumb stuff in regards to the Ashes of Creation fallout as that toppled over. But the main point of this video is I want to do a retrospective look over the main points, the main plot points, if you will, of Pirate Software's downfall. That is at this point absolutely what it is. We are going to be looking at the major controversies, starting with the OnlyFangs guild drama that kind of started, and then a couple months later the SKG initiative started up again. That brought a lot of Pirate Software's previous content into question, ends up delving into other bits, and we're covering everything from that to the HeartBound code that ended up getting annualized, chatting with a former roommate of Pirate Software, and a few more of the dramas in between, and then tie it all together by taking a look at the stats. Where was he at the beginning of all of this? What happened at the apex of it? And where is he now? Now, to wrap this all up, I know this doesn't sound coincidental, but I got very lucky and I have been given the opportunity to sponsor a video here in the month of February. So if you'd like to support your favorite milkman, please enjoy the video and share it with your friends, family. Subscribe if you would like. We hit that 100K milestone and the silver play button is on its way. So huge shout out to everyone that has subbed and have joined Quinker Nation on this journey. Additionally, give this video a like and perchance a hype. I know it does the most in boosting it in the algorithm. And lastly, before we get started, I want to quickly thank our partner, CyberGhost VPN, for sponsoring this video. I think everyone knows at this point, you're being monitored every time you hop online. And even incognito mode doesn't always help in preventing that. Your internet service provider, your school or work's IT department, even your own home Wi-Fi router, they can all track what you do online. And that's where CyberGhost VPN comes in. Simply select one of over 100 locations before you browse to encrypt and reroute all of your traffic through their secure servers. This way, you keep the browsing you want private. CyberGhost also unlocks geo-restricted games and content from over 40 platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney+. And you can even score better deals online by just changing your virtual location. With over 38 million users worldwide and over 20,000 excellent reviews on Trustpilot, it's one of the best VPNs out there. And it works on all major devices and operating systems like Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, and you can protect up to 7 devices at the same time. Perfect for sharing with family and friends. With my link in the description below, you get their best deal ever. Just $2.03 a month plus 4 months free, which is 84% off. There's even a 45-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. It's a great product, and by signing up using our link in the description, you help not just support me, but the entirety of Quinker Nation. Thank you so much again to CyberGhost VPN for sponsoring, and now back to the video. Now, I don't want to go into the time wasting of explaining who Pirate Software is. There are other people that have made incredible videos going over some of that intro of him kind of rising to fame, which is not the main focus of this video. So for the sake of saving your guys' time, I am attaching down below a June the King video, as well as a Turkey Tom video that go over and do a much more in-depth analysis of all of that intro stuff as well. I will additionally include a playlist down below that is all of my previous videos about Pirate Software. Now, to go over a year back now, the start of 2025, we have the OnlyFangs WoW incident. The nexus for the soon-to-be downfall of Pirate Software. What did you expect me to do? I was out of mana. Now I'm going to show the main clips, sometimes clips from my videos covering this, but TLDR, Pirate Software is a part of the OnlyFangs Guild, a content creation group that was playing World of Warcraft hardcore. You have to spend hundreds of hours grinding up a character, and if it dies, you got to restart and do it again. And that was kind of the whole thing. And Pirate Software, along with some other people, kind of shit the bed during a very intense moment. Some people lost their characters. This is where the roaching allegations started up.
Just kill the Mastiffs. Innovate. Kill the Mastiffs. The Mastiffs can be Ice Novas.
Now we're gonna wait.
Nusara?
No. Okay. He has mana, so I don't know.
Evocation's on cooldown, man.
You have okay. Evocation is on cooldown. Sure.
I can
but you
talk
have
about
mana gem and you have ropes.
Is Ice Nova. There's no that much mana.
You have a boss in you. You called run.
Getting slowed.
This is not the time to be argumentative.
As much as you're angry right now, of course I ran.
I'm not angry at all.
You overpulled 2 packs. You overpulled 2 packs and a boss. I had 1,400 mana left. I had to spend all of that mana to try and put it on Blizzard to save you guys in the first place, and nothing left.
Not
you
really.
Weren't paying attention to party resources. You overpulled, and you weren't paying attention to where the boss was. That's not on me.
Ooh. Ooh.
I saw the back.
Just take some blame, God damn it. Just
a
bit.
I don't know if we could like,
it's okay.
move back. Yeah.
on me.
But I mean,
Like you're not even like in danger.
Oh,
you
I'm
can
100%
at least
in
try
danger.
a frost nova. Like,
100%.
No, you're not.
No, 100% in danger.
No,
When
he's
your
not.
shot color says run, it's time to run, you run. That is how that works.
No, it's not.
Roll
You
a
were the
mage and do
first
it.
person that ran away and didn't even look back. Literally.
This
You
is the
didn't even
second
say
time.
anything.
This
You
is
could
the
have at
second.
least said like the
Wait,
boss.
you're just
going
gonna talk over me? Is that what we're doing now? You done giving your point? You good?
Yes. I'm
Okay, cool. You go roll a mage then. See you around. Chief.
Did he leave the call?
Now, this was, I think, for a lot of people, the first time that the curtain was kind of pulled back a bit, and a bit of who Pirate actually is was shown to the public. The theme throughout all of the drama that we are going over the course of this entire video is going to be summed up to this singular point. Pirate Software cannot actually admit when he's wrong. To take that a step further, in my observations, I don't think Pirate Software is ever truly believing in a situation like this, as black and white as it is to us, that he made mistakes. I genuinely believe that he is incapable of recognizing that he's actually wrong in these situations. As to why that's the case, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. But the alternative is that he's being very particular and malicious about these deceptions. And for me personally, based off of what we've seen, I just find it a lot harder to believe that he's actually being very careful and malicious about being so wrong so often. But to go back to what we just saw, obviously there were other ways that he could have played. This was widely accepted, even from Soda Poppin', who's one of the leaders of the guild. It also showed, which I would say is not as a big of a deal, but based on the clips and how he reacted to these situations, he wasn't interested in expressing any understanding of the other people's positions. He was there and speaking for the sole purpose of defending himself and explaining to everybody how they were wrong, and how he was fundamentally and objectively correct in everything that he did. Now, additionally, around the same time, he had also done something similar in Ashes of Creation, another pretty large at the time MMO that hadn't been closed down yet. Now, this hadn't gained a lot of traction at the time, but later down the road, the story would end up building up some more during the Stop Killing Games drama. TLDR, he blamed someone from his guild for pulling an ocular, a beast that ended up wiping a good chunk of their guild during this fight, and it ended up being the case that he pulled the ocular. And it's at that point that we find out from Pirate that that wasn't the incorrect move, pulling the ocular. It was actually, in fact, his team's fault no matter what.
God damn it, guys.
No, who pulled the ocular?
So one of you pulled the ocular. The lightning ball pulled. I cast lightning ball before that Oculus appeared, and half the raid was in the back because they pulled the wrong pack. I'm not at fault there. I'm correct there for doing that. 100%.
Again, this is just kind of corroborating the point that he just seems very ego-driven. He cannot be wrong. He immediately finds a different reason to blame anybody other than himself, who was the person that pulled the ocular. But we'll find more of that as we continue on. Following up after this incident, we had an individual here that ended up creating a game. And this game had come from PvtPart, so you can find on YouTube here. TLDR, he made this post on Livestream Fail. He put Pirate Software drama in his indie game, kind of did a shameless self-promote, and it included a snippet of what seems to be a roach wearing a mage outfit that was using Pirate Software's actual voice clips from his streams, and they seem to be a part of the game. Pirate Software sees that his likeness was used in this game, that being his actual voice, and he issues a DMCA strike against PvtPart.
There was a dude earlier today that went onto Reddit and said that he was using my voice in a video game, showed a bunch of videos of it, and then put that game up on Steam. A lot of people in the thread told him not to do that, that would end up being a legal problem for him. He did it anyway. So I filed a DMCA claim, and he has now filed a counterclaim against me. We're going to take you to court. You're going to lose. You cannot use somebody's likeness or voice in any way inside of your games without their permission. It's a really stupid thing to do. Incredibly so. So I'm going to send this over to Kronos now, because he is a lawyer in copyright law. That is his job. Welcome to the Finding Out timeline, bud.
Now, a big issue with this DMCA is that it was unlawful. The reason for that is because the build of the game that included Pirate Software using his voice that was shown in that Livestream Fails post was never an actual public build for the game. It was never published on Steam at that point. It was just a developer build. Now, don't get me wrong, it was advertised in a way that you would not know that. And I think for the common man, that is something that is like understandable. Okay, you know, you were baited into believing that it was publicly used. But unfortunately for Pirate, especially when he's making accusations of taking somebody to court, more than just the confidence in his voice, you need to make sure that you're actually DMCAing something that you can DMCA. It did not exist on Steam. Steam, therefore he could not do it. And they ended up, of course, walking that DMCA back. However, Pirate Software ended up going onto Twitter and saying the DMCA was absolutely not unlawful. We filed a DMCA in response to the developer claiming that he put my voice in his video game, etc. Now, he did get corrected in the comments by Frost here, shout out to them going over that, but I had taken it one step further, and I interviewed the lawyer that was prepped to defend Private Parts in this potential false DMCA lawsuit. This was back from when I was Bald Theo, but here is an entire segment dedicated to why his DMCA was false. And we go through and walk through the entire thing with his lawyer. Again, will be in the playlist that I create for this video. Now, even leading up to this point, I think a lot of people were still being a bit charitable. I mean, Pirate's metrics didn't really take a nosedive. He was still gaining traction, just albeit slower than his previous growth. In this false DMCA drama, we saw that he was very confidently wrong. And again, this is something that people were going to start seeing more and more as the Stop Killing Games drama built up. He appears incredibly cocky, additionally very condescending to the people around him that he deems, haters, people out to get him, people he dislikes. And when you act so confidently and you behave in this type of way, if you end up being wrong, it looks that much worse. Now, additionally, around this time, I had also dropped the titular Pirate Software is being a furry. In this video, I went over some of the previous stuff that had happened in Second Life, where it was also kind of discovered, or I guess I should say brought to the forefront, that Pirate Software previously was a furry, and he would go under the pseudonym Maldavius Figtree. And tied to that pseudonym Maldavius, we saw a history of him showing up in communities like EVE Online or Second Life, getting involved in some big drama and then disappearing from that community and starting up somewhere else. I'll talk more about that later, but the main part of this video was showcasing that it appeared that Pirate had been cheating his way through puzzle games. Pirate Software, someone who I would say has built up a brand and IP that he's a very intelligent dude, is a hacker, goes to these hacking conventions, has won awards, Black Hat awards for going to these and solving puzzles. For him to what seems to be very blatantly checking his phone or disappearing and then suddenly solving a puzzle when he was claiming that he wasn't, using any outside resources, well, it looks really fucking bad. Watch as he's like, racking his brain, can't figure out what to do here. You basically have to use your camera in the game, and he's going to reach for his phone.
An image of a quantum object. Image of a quantum object. We don't even have an image, though. There's no image available. Oh, by the way, I am not reading most of chat, and I cannot hear TTS today. So if you're trying to talk to me using TTS, it will not work. Observing the image of a quantum object. Observing a quantum object in the image of a quantum object. I'm going back there. I'm going back there. I want to solve that. There's nothing in the room that looks like the object. Unless we make one.
Now, he appeared to be exhibiting the same type of looking down at his phone and checking stuff in Animal Well, this one, as well as I believe a third game. People who have gone through and fully puzzle solved those games have gone over and fully analyzed those. I believe I leave links in those in my video. But again, this is just kind of adding on to, okay, the way Pirate has portrayed himself over the course of his career so far on YouTube now had holes getting poked into it. There were things that weren't quite adding up. Now, in the timeline that I have shown you guys so far, I've missed a key plot point. Back on April 2nd of 2024, even a year before this, Accursed Farms put out the beginning of the Stop Killing Games initiative, the largest campaign ever to stop publishers destroying games. In it, he explains the issue that games are just allowed to essentially be killed off and there's no ramifications for this, and that's bad. With this video, Pirate Software had actually responded to it with two full videos that he had made himself. Stop Killing Games and Stop Killing Games 2. Bust. Again, there are other videos that have dissected why he was incorrect in some of his criticisms against the Stop Killing Games initiative, but TLDR, he claimed that the Stop Killing Games initiative's goals were far too vague, and when it comes to, politics and wanting to see actual policy change, they need to be very specific. Additionally, based on what he saw in the Stop Killing Games initiative, what they wanted, he was under the belief that it would kill live service games as a whole. Additionally, he would say stuff like, well, MMOs are meant to be played massively multiplayer, so if you just make extra servers for them, at end of life, like you're not playing the game how it's intended to be played. As if that was worse than, just having the game outright taken away from the people purchasing it.
But I would argue that this isn't actually preserving these games. Social games, such as, let's say, Apex Legends, require a number of players to be in the match at the same time so that you can have an experience that is only able to be obtained through lots of players interacting, right? There's only 5 people online. Why would I play that? So why would you want to preserve a game in that state? That doesn't make any sense to me. You want to take down these live service games, put them up on a private server, and then play it with a couple of people. You're not bringing it back at its height. You're not taking a snapshot of what the game actually is. You're making it limp on in a way that doesn't make any sense.
It's interesting seeing these things in hindsight because it's so damn clear at this point. And a lot of people, don't get me wrong, these videos were met with quite a bit of negativity, not to the extreme that they are looked at now. But even seeing these back then, a lot of people were being very charitable. But like in the example that was just shown, it's a very subjective way to explain away why people shouldn't be allowed to have private servers of like MMOs, for example. Just because Pirate Software believes that the main experience that you'll never be able to kind of like truly preserve has been taken away doesn't mean that that is the case for anybody else playing the game. It also, and again, this is kind of a motif of this SKG part, culminates in a fundamental misunderstanding of what the Stop Killing Games initiative aims to achieve, which is fundamentally, if you purchase a game, if you purchase a good, you should have the ability to own it. And the fact that these companies are allowed to remove this commodity and suddenly it doesn't exist anymore even after you purchased it, that's yucky. With the fast approaching deadline for this Stop Killing Games initiative getting signatures for the EU, that being July 31st, Ross felt the need to come out and clear the air. And he did something that he really didn't want to do. He addressed Pirate Software. And this was an explosive response, to say the least.
Our biggest critic by far is YouTuber and streamer Pirate Software, who goes by Thor. If your only exposure to Stop Killing Games has been this video, then you've been misinformed. This video is by someone who does not understand the campaign, has been trying to stop it, and has been making up what it is about. I am not saying that lightly. I will prove it in a minute.
Basically, we don't want single-player games to have DRM that the developers can turn off and thus render the single-player games inactive anymore. This is what they want to change. They need to be specific that they're talking about single-player games that do not need a server to support them.
No.
And as much as they want it to be about specifically games where it is a single-player game that has always online functionality, it would impact every live service game that exists, instead of just targeting single-player, always online games.
No, that's not what it is. Stop Killing Games includes single-player games, but nothing about it is specific to them. He completely made that up, and I have no idea where he got that impression.
Transitioning an entire multiplayer server-side game into a single-player video game. Imagine the day that World of Warcraft shuts down, and suddenly you have to make it a single-player game for every individual that ever bought the game. That's what they're asking for.
No.
If you try to tell me that every studio needs to run their live service game indefinitely or not run one at all, then no one's going to run them.
Oh no! He wheeled out that line about publishers having to support the game forever. He was literally watching the video earlier where it says it won't do that in big letters.
Now, I showed you a couple of clips there, but this is a 50-minute video, and that portion responding to Pirate Software and stuff took up 30 minutes of it. I felt I should also show that not only did he do this, but Ross also made attempts to communicate with Pirate Software, and so we got a few interesting clips out of that, where number one, he showed how Pirate was talking about Ross on his streams, and then how Pirate reacted to seeing a comment written by Ross.
So this was my first encounter of him.
Oh shit, now this is actually really dumb. It's used car salesman garbage. This is shit. Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to. That is awful. That is a horrible goddamn direction. Eat my entire ass. That the level of stupid that I just had to receive was like sitting on Twitter for 12 hours. All of this can eat shit then. I dropped the mask entirely. I have no qualms about that. They can eat my entire ass. The whole thing.
I cut out half of the clips he included in that segment, by the way. I just included the famous ones, you know, eat my entire ass, I drop the mask entirely. Here we also get to see how he responds to Ross leaving a comment under one of his videos.
It's clear that you hate the initiative, and I doubt I would change that. That is correct. I would encourage you to at least hate it for what it accurately is. I do.
He says that so confidently. Oh yeah, you knocked it out of the park. You understood everything.
In other words, the customer is told explicitly that their access ends at the time of payment. Most live service games do not do this, which could run afoul of EU law. Most is patently incorrect.
patently incorrect. Okay, for those who don't know much about live service games, that's like saying the Earth isn't round. He says verifiably false things so confidently. If his viewers don't know any better, how can I blame anyone for believing what he says about the initiative when he talks like that? And he does not wish to discuss this with me or anyone else in the initiative.
Would you consider reaching out and talking to Ross about it? No. And the reason why is because I found his entire statement over the YouTube incredibly disingenuous.
Now, I had kind of known firsthand that Pirate Software was very much not interested in having a conversation with Ross because I messaged Pirate directly and he wrote back to me. Unfortunately, as I'm assuming he has deleted our DMs, I don't have access to them anymore, but thankfully, for the most part, I have them saved through these videos. Here's that first part just to show you guys that I was, messaging him directly, and this is way back in June, 2 days after Ross's video had come out, and I was very straight up about everything going on. My name is Connor Quintheo on YouTube, got 46K subs, talk about content creator drama. I've spoken negatively about you in some of those past videos, and I tell him that I'm researching the video and was like, hey, I think that there's, sides to both of your points, Ross and you. At this point, I hadn't fully watched Ross's video, so I did think that he had a bit more weight to some of the points Pirate himself had made. Just clarifying, because I wasn't being disingenuous there. And I say down there, I genuinely think that a discussion between you two would be incredibly useful for both sides. I think you have some legitimate criticisms, etc., and go through that. I even say, hey, I know that in the past you said you won't speak to Ross, so I understand this is pretty much a shot in the dark, but I truly think it's a win-win. And I also suggest, because I want skin in the game as well, that I was going to moderate that discussion. He just gives me the default, this is what I posted on Twitter, this is my response. He also says, it seems like most of your content is react/hate chasing. I then double down myself and say, hey, if it's an issue that you aren't cool with me moderating it, I'll keep out of it. Over everything, I think that conversation would do a great deal in reducing how polarized people have become on this, and I know that's antithetical to my channel, but that was my goal starting out. I did my best for what it was worth to me, and I'd also reached out to Ross. He was very much down for the conversation, but he expressed to me that he doubted very highly that it was going to be possible to get Pirate on board with having that conversation. Now, to kind of tie it back into looking at this retrospectively, I genuinely believe that Pirate genuinely believes that Ross is somehow a disingenuous person. I think that he looks at Ross as a complete moron, which was, very apparent based on how he was talking about Ross. It became very apparent that he believed he was much smarter on the subject matter than Ross was, even though he was completely misrepresenting and misunderstanding the whole point of Stop Killing Games. But even with this belief that I have, I'm still a bit dumbfounded as to why he never wanted to have that follow-up conversation. Even just from a content perspective, that seems like a great idea to dunk on this idiot who's trying to lead the charge for a good reason, but is misguided. And so maybe, on that front, I'm wrong about my assertion that maybe to some degree he is self-aware enough to know that sometimes he's been incorrect, but instead of actually admitting to that, his ego is too inflated at this point to correct path, and he would just rather deny and stay frosty. Now, additionally, in his response, he had sent me this post that he had made on Twitter, and I'm just going to read the little recap here. My main issue with this initiative is that it is broad in its approach to change the industry in the exact language of the initiative, not the fact, requests that all games stay in a functional, playable state. It says this is not feasible for all games at a technical level and could potentially restrict developers from making online games like MMOs, MOBAs, and user-generated content games in the future. Effectively, this has the potential to restrict future developers from making kick-ass experiences because it locks a weight on their designs. He says a lot more stuff. He ends up making a response where he said, just talk to Charlie and Josh Drive Hayes for a bit in DMs. He apologizes for being a dick to Ross, which is a dub, showcasing he can also selectively apologize. And he also talks about here, on the developer side, I've been in a constant battle with people online for nearly a decade trying to inform them how difficult it is to make and release video games. The idea that any of these technical hurdles are easy to overcome and would be simple to implement is the exact kind of thing I've been fighting. Well, down below that, he was responded to by a game developer named Jack Vania. I can't show you his replies to it, but he was effectively saying, hey, you're wrong about this. There are easy ways to implement these things, and the systems that we have in place right now just aren't ready to facilitate them, and they need to be changed. He deleted his Twitter account, and the surviving thing that I have here is roughly an hour-long interview with him where he goes in detail, point after point, with Stop Killing Games. And the focus of this wasn't to dunk on Pirate Software, but I had seen his messages and he replied in one of my videos, and so I asked him to come on to kind of explain Stop Killing Games and how what they were asking for was incredibly feasible. I'm just going to include a small clip of my favorite thing that he had to say during this to kind of explain the situation we were in with SK SKG and how to move forward.
I'm assuming Pirate is looking at this from a perspective of this is going to be impossible to do today with how we do things today, because he lacks the forward thinking to be like, okay, so we just need to change the way we do things going forward, which is the correct approach. Complexity isn't an engineering problem. Complexity is a brain compute problem. Slow down, space things out, and plan ahead. That is where the major pain points lie in development.
That was genuinely probably one of my favorite parts of covering any of the Pirate Software stuff, is getting the opportunity to interview people like Jack Vania and get their side, their perspective on things. Getting to sit down with an actual game dev and walk through the SKG initiative point by point was very interesting for me, because you get to learn about it and understand in a way, you know, arguing for its feasibility, how these things can be done, and hearing how he describes it and how he thinks it's very possible in contrast to how Pirate Software explained it, I thought was just very useful for the general public that was interested in the Stop Killing Games initiative, interested in any of the drama going on and what they'd learned from it. Now, two main things here. Number one, he mentions just talk to Charlie, that being Moist Critical Charlie. He had spoken to him in DMs, as well as Josh Strive Hayes, but we're focusing on this. He irritated Moist Critical so badly that he ended up making a video about it. Not only that, he brought Pirate Software out of drama coverage retirement because of how annoyed he got.
I'm sure many of you have noticed over the last 10 or 11 months, internet drama hasn't been a huge focal point of the channel because I haven't seen a whole bunch of it. I haven't kept up with the vast majority of it. That being said, there is something that has unfolded here that's like the John Wick killing the dog moment that's bringing me back, just very temporarily. And it's Pirate Software. Yesterday I talked about Stop Killing Games. And there's no way to talk about Stop Killing Games without also mentioning Pirate Software because of the profound effect he has had on that initiative in its demise. His ego is so out of control, I feel like he's only a week or two away from exclusively referring to himself in third person. He just continues to double down, even proudly stating he is doubling down. Wow, how incredibly noble, doubling down on things you are provably, blatantly wrong about. It prompted me to reach out directly to him, to talk to him, to see, like, why isn't he acknowledging that? Is there a reason? Like, what is going on there? So I did. He made it very clear he was not very happy with my coverage of Stop Killing Games, which is fine. I think that's totally fine. I'm not going to leak DMs or really go in depth on our private conversation, but the point of me reaching out to him was to talk about his refusal to acknowledge that he did, maybe unintentionally, misrepresent Stop Killing Games, and it led to a just shy of 2 hours, like, circular argument that ultimately got us nowhere.
Now, obviously, there's like a hoo-hoo-ha-ha, like you brought Moist Critical out of, you know, quote-unquote drama retirement for him because he was so annoyed at your conversations and your response. But the bigger reason that I want to show that is, like, Moist Critical is looked at as someone who's like a fence-sitter, which I don't even really think is a negative thing. But, like, you got someone who is very generally, like, in the face of, if there's multiple points, even if one side is a little bit weaker than the other, he's not really going to be taking a dramatic side. To have someone like this who's stepped away from drama recognize how clearly wrong you are and your complete refusal to admit that you're wrong, or even the bare minimum of just admitting that you misunderstood or just like got it wrong, is insane. And I think that this is why this whole Pirate Software controversy blew up to the degree that it did. In my tenure of drama coverage, you know, doing this for a job, I had yet to see someone who was as well liked as Pirate Software, as big as Pirate Software, respond to a situation where they're wrong with this much ego that they respond in the way that they are. Like, just completely denying the reality of the situation that is so clear to everybody watching. And if Moist Critical is huffing and puffing about how clearly wrong you are, we are so far past it being like a nuanced misunderstanding, if that makes sense. Now, for me, these two Twitter posts and Moist Critical making that second follow-up video, this was the start of what is now going to be a death spiral for the next month and a half. I call it a death spiral because truly, at any point during the next month and a half, if Pirate Software just shut the fuck up, admitted that he was wrong in some facet, or just truly went radio silent, or just completely ignored the drama that was going on, I would not have half the channel that I do today. I also don't think his fall from grace would have been nearly as large. But you are now going to see that time and time again, Pirate attempts to engage engage with the controversy, attempts to show that he is correct when he isn't, and in doing so creates the easiest videos that I have ever made in my entire life. Pirate Software would make a verifiably false statement or an incredibly misleading one. The proof that he's being deceitful or something would usually show up in a reply to his tweets, or it just wouldn't take a lot of digging, and a new video would come out to talk about that, in which case, for some reason, Pirate would respond to it. To give Pirate some credit, I think it's important mentioning it here, as well as I did mention this in the most recent video covering him. Pirate Software had said that he had been swatted twice beginning of July. I covered this and some other information in this video here. Pirate Software just got swatted, and this is one of my most negatively received videos, and it had to do with the swatting bit.
The most interesting thing that came out of it is so many different developers actually reached out and were pissed off at me for leaving Offbrand, because they're like, the trolls win and now they know that they can like cyberbully people into losing their jobs and shit. And I was like, they already could do that. Like that's how they tried to kill me on Tuesday. So yeah. I mean, like, I'm going to be honest with you. I know you have like this big grandstanding narrative that you have to fit to, and oh shit, now they know that they have blood in the water. They swatted me on Tuesday. I don't give a shit what you think. I'm out, dude. Enjoy your initiative. Have fun. In the middle of the stream, about 9 a.m., I got a bunch of phone calls to my phone. They left a bunch of voicemails of shit saying, your time has come, in like a giant screeching voice, and then we got swatted. But at the same time, it's like, I don't give a fuck about your initiative because your people are unhinged. And I realize that's not everybody that's part of that, but I don't give a shit, dude. Like, I'm out.
Now, the main issues that people had with this were, number one, was Pirate Software being truthful, or was he just kind of, drama farming? He was empathy farming. He already had a track record of being deceitful, lying, or just being straight up incorrect about stuff. And so that kind of ended up warping into also this idea that the swatting didn't actually involve people showing up, the SWAT team showing up with guns drawn at his home, and that this was just a phone call that was sent in where, he's talked about before, I've spoken with my local police department. They just give me a phone call when stuff like this happens. To a lot of people, they perceived him describing this as like they were trying to kill me by swatting me, as him kind of, blowing it out of proportion that, it just ended up being a phone call. For the first point, did it happen? Yes, it did. One of the people that was following the drama at the time that I am aware of ended up putting out a Freedom of Information Act request, a FOIA request, to the local police department where Pirate Software resides. And they received back the call logs from what he is talking about. The swatting absolutely happened. Obviously, I'm not going to release this information, so, take my word for it, I guess, but I'm not leaking that information. But on top of that, when we come down to what swatting is, regardless of the SWAT team showing up, if you make a call to a police force and say that this person is such a big deal, is such a high threat, that they respond with sending a SWAT team, or that's your goal, you are trying to get that person killed. Regardless of them showing up to his home or not, Pirate Software is 1,000,000,000% correct on that. That is what is happening. You can send pizzas to someone's home. You can, prank in other ways that are not going to threaten their life. But as soon as you are trying to get people who are holding guns with the express intent to neutralize a threat that they are being told is in this home and is highly dangerous, you are trying to get that person killed. Out of any flack that he had received for his actions in regard to everything that was going on, this to me was the least warranted. However, the fact that he assumed that the people that had done this to him were part of the Stop Killing Games initiative, and then said, I'm not going to touch it anymore if you guys are trying to threaten my life, that was a bit of, making an assumption that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. He's insinuating here that the people that have threatened his life are somehow doing it in the name of the Stop Killing Games initiative. That for me was the most contentious issue with how he responded to this. But you might have also heard in the clip I just showed that he talked about leaving off-brand games. Now, additionally, in this video, I covered that once again, Pirate Software was lying. And this time it looked like he wasn't trying to lie with intention to deceive. He was lying because he just didn't know, I guess, or he didn't check. He got into an argument on Twitter with Ross, Accursed Farms here, saying, hey, you deleted VODs of you talking about this stuff previously. And he's like, they auto-delete after 60 days. Any stream going over 12 hours of runtime on YouTube is auto-cut off. He literally made fun of Ross for not knowing how VODs work. But then he got caught on stream. This is literally replying to their little message chain there of him literally admitting to the fact that he had deleted the VODs. And I went ahead and found the actual VOD on his channel just to show you guys, this is directly from it. Here at about 3:37:32, this is him openly admitting to deleting those VODs.
On top of it, I went through the Reddit for their initiative for that, and there were a number of posts in there that were people saying we should keep baiting him and attacking him because if we do that, he'll keep talking about it, then more people will sign the initiative. They were planning that shit. And those threads are still there. They're still up. People are still talking about that shit on there. So instead of that, I just deleted all the VODs where we were talking about it. I kept my videos up and I walked away.
Now, I explained this too in my response in that video, but again, this is kind of a motif of the greater arcing controversy. The issue wasn't necessarily that Pirate deleted these VODs. He said people were trying to rage bait him or whatever excuse that he had given for it. By all means, that's okay. The issue is this man was fundamentally incorrect in a way that, you know, he could have prevented it by just saying, you know, I'm not sure, maybe I did delete them, people have been brigading or anything like that. But instead, he treats Ross like a moron, is like, I can't believe this guy doesn't know how VODs work, and he was still fucking wrong. He never follows up on this, by the way. Like, the ego to treat someone like this and still be incorrect about it is insane. And he just can't stop himself from doing it. You might have heard at the beginning of that first clip I showed you of him talking about being swatted that he was talking about that he left off-brand games. I'm kind of covering this out of order, but this was the video I'd put out before it. Pirate Software quit and lied about it, and he puts out this tweet here. I'm no longer working at Off-Brand Games. Like I said, he was working as a part of it, and this is an offshoot of Off-Brand from Ludwig. People were attacking all of the games we were publishing and trying to mass review bomb them. You can dislike the things I say, but this kind of behavior is unhinged. Well, shout out to this individual here, Mischief. I ended up going into Steam reviews and checking myself as well, which shows up a little bit later in the video. And he goes through all of the Off-Brand Games, you know, content that they had put out, the different games they had. And you can see that there is no massive review bomb. Matter of fact, there's a lot of positive ones as of recent for Rivals of Either. There's another game, which was just a demo that still had literally 0 negative reviews. A different one here, Aethermancer Demo. You can see that there are these bars over here. That is a single negative review, each of these, and there's 2 more behind the second Quintheo here. As a matter of fact, the only game that was getting review bombed was Pirate Software's own game HeartBound, and there was actual reasons for it. The game is still to this day unfinished, and there were a lot of issues that people had with it way earlier on. People do seem to have legitimate gripes with HeartBound though, which we will get into as we continue. Again, this dude is saying that he left Off-Brand Games because people were attacking them because of him. They were mass review bombing the games. I don't even know where he came up with this. I don't even know if he somehow meant that, you know, like he had also mentioned that they were getting attacked on Discord, Twitter, Reddit, these other things. Maybe that's what he meant by mass review bomb, these other places, but we all understand the connotation of a review bomb. It's usually in a place that you can view it. He knows what a mass review bomb is. He was bringing up the fact that Helldivers 2 was getting massive review bombs in regard to the PSN shit that was going on. It is again just like crazy to everybody to make a lie that is so very clearly untrue and more importantly, so easily provably false. All you had to do was check stream charts. Someone was bound to do it. I ended up doing it, and you could just see the proof. And on top of that, if there were more negative reviews, if they're disingenuous, you can get them removed if they're not talking about the game. So even if there is a negligible impact of this review bomb if they can't directly tie it to the actual game itself. Bringing up Helldivers, and this kind of goes into Pirate again contradicting himself. If you are part of a studio, yes, you absolutely represent the games that come out of it. Being a part of a game studio, and he had a very adverse opinion to stop killing games, maybe people wouldn't want to support a game studio that has one of their, you know, higher ups being someone that is so against stop killing games. Maybe that's a justifiable reason for people to not want to support that company while you're there. I've sunk a little too much time into this. We'll continue on. I apologize. I am truly, this is not bullshit. This is by far the most entertaining drama, most interesting drama that I ever covered. And so sometimes I can't stop myself from going into all the little details, so apologies. Now we're about to jump into the HeartBound information, and there is a lot. That's probably the second really big aspect of this whole drama. The only noteworthy things I think that we've kind of missed out on, or that I'm just not going to, you know, take and fully cover, are this graph that he was toting around showing, you know, like I had no negative impact on stop killing games. Second is him dropping his banger line, I hope you get everything you asked for, but nothing that you want.
I hope that your initiative gets everything you asked for, but nothing you wanted.
And thirdly, he compared this situation to Kony 2012. I have a video going over this, but it's more like educating as to what Kony 2012 is and how the comparison is insane and maybe like his idea of what he was trying to go for. But now we move on to the second main chapter of this drama, HeartBound. I want to start this chapter off by giving a big shout out to someone who kind of made a lot of this possible with their coverage, and they kind of blew up after all this. That being Slop Media Network. They put out some absolutely banger videos. Developer examines pirate software, part 2 DRM analysis code. He goes over the code, and then what we're going to be talking about here, job history and development hell of HeartBound. Those two videos were, in my opinion, some of the best content that had come out during this drama. Now, one part of that video was focusing on his job history, and it seems to be evident that Pirate Software was padding his stats, so to speak, which I don't think is necessarily out of the realm of, realistic. I think most people are going to word how they've worked in different jobs across, different businesses in the way that's going to sound the best for, prospective people that are looking to hire somebody. But the far more interesting section to me, and I think a lot of people, was his coverage of the development hell that was HeartBound, where Pirate lied seemingly multiple times about the development process. He clearly, for example, just straight up lied about having COVID.
On October 2019, Jason tweeted that roughly 86% of Chapter 3 has now been completed. Then 2 years later, Jason tweets that Chapter 3 is now 92% done. So over 2 years, he made 8% progress on one chapter. 20 years of game dev industry experience, people. Let's rewind and go back to 2020 and see the Twitch statistics and see what was happening. Okay, the start of 2020 up till March seems like a normal stream schedule. Seems like he caught a cold on March 10th. Then after 9 days, he goes to urgent care and is diagnosed with pneumonia and gets a COVID test. Then we move to March 21st and COVID test results come back and it's negative. No COVID, just pneumonia. Wait, never mind. March 24th, Jason goes back to urgent care. Pneumonia was incorrectly diagnosed and he actually has severe bronchitis. All right, March 30th, he's still sick, but once again confirms negative for COVID. This is really important. Then we hit February 2021, and then he tweets out he has had COVID for 9 months since the start of February of 2020. Wait, what? Jason was only sick in March according to his own tweets at that time period. And there's work from February from earlier. And there's proof he worked during April, May, June, July, and August at the very least, judging by his Twitch stats and his Steam announcements and patches for the game. Where he lost 9 months of time and had to stop development based on his tweets, I have no idea. I mean, it's not like he's going to change his story after this, right? Oh wait, there's this old tweet from November 2020 where Jason says he was recovering for nearly 8 months and couldn't daily stream or work. Let's look at the Twitch stats graph again and his tweets. He couldn't work during this period, but everything he posts during this time says he was working on HeartBound, and his Twitch stats confirm it. So on June 2023, he catches COVID again. Okay, that seems to match up with his Twitch stats graph. Here, there's a clear week gone. Let's see what Jason says in July.
That was a hell of a thing. That's the second time I've gotten COVID. The first time took 9 months to recover. This one took probably about, I think it was in total about 20 days. So
there is no point in time in 2020, 2021, 2022, or 2023 where he lost 9 months consecutively or stopped development for that period of time, since all these gaps are months apart and he only had COVID twice. Let's skip ahead to June 2024 and see what he says about these 4 years of development.
How long have you been working in this game? Was the coding a solo job? Yeah. Nobody else has touched the code base for HeartBound ever except for me. It's just me. I've been working on it for about 7 years, but I lost 2.5 years to COVID.
Okay, I hope at this point you realize his excuses for not working on HeartBound and his tweets are filled with complete BS.
Even in this situation, if you were the most charitable, okay, he lost the 9 months. That doesn't explain losing 2.5 years. An outrageous way to justify that he is just not a very quick writer, which seems to be the biggest issue is the writing, not the rest of it. But the reason that this was such a big deal is because this is kind of marking the deep dive into HeartBound. Another big part of this development hell thing being such a big issue is the fact that HeartBound had been in development for 7 years at this point. As a matter of fact, in regard to that, mass review bombing we had seen about HeartBound earlier, this was also some of the fans of the game getting annoyed because it had been over 7 years in development. Additionally, there was this huge 2-year gap between December 2023 when there were, more consistent updates and January 2025. Now, this kind of coincides with something that Steam had recently implemented at the time that the first review bomb had happened back in February of 2025 to help a consumer see that a game was still being consistently developed or it had clearly been abandoned by its developers, they started putting these little warnings in front of games that hadn't been updated. Here's that alert. Note, the last update made by the developers was over 13 months ago. The information and timeline described by the developers here may no longer be up to date. And you can see, yes, this was in regard to HeartBound. Pirate had actually made a comment about this around the time it happened, saying, for context, I had a conversation with Steam support regarding the label. At first, the support staff also didn't know what had caused the label, and then they figured it out in this thread. Apparently, that label is applied and updated only by updating the primary branch for your game, meaning development branches or update posts have no meaning regardless of their content. Which, fucking duh. If you never made changes to the primary main branch of the game for consumers, you haven't really updated the game. But now with all this buzz around HeartBound and the development process and how long it's taken, people started, thinking about things, asking questions. If it's taken this long to develop, we've seen Pirate as this sort of person who's, worked at Blizzard for 7 years, has 20 years of game dev experience. How does HeartBound run? How well is it coded? Well, it turns out that HeartBound was coded apparently very poorly. In my best performing video to date, and the title that I am the happiest with, we have Pirate Software tried to crucify Coding Jesus. This is Coding Jesus. He's known as Coding Jesus, not because of his ego, but because he kind of looks like Jesus. He did not have very kind things to say about Pirate Software's code with HeartBound. The main issue is that Pirate Software responded to Coding Jesus's video talking about his code and that it was bad. And while there ended up being some points that were, kind of in favor of Pirate, being that it was Game Maker and Coding Jesus was not super, well informed about it, the vast majority of what Pirate attempted to do was just to slander and put into question Coding Jesus's reputation, what he was doing, why he was covering Pirate. And on top of that, this was Coding Jesus essentially responding to, Pirate's rebuttal to what he had to say about his coding. And I did my damned best to help in layman's terms explain what I think Coding Jesus was sharing with me about the code as well. TLDR, there's a lot of much simpler ways to do a lot of what Pirate was doing in his coding that number one would have saved him a shit ton of time, but number two would have made more sense given the reputation that he tried to give himself about having 20 years of game dev experience, 7 years at Blizzard. He had painted this image of himself that was like this incredible tech dude, an incredible developer that had this wealth of knowledge, but in practice, it was clear that he had very little understanding of what he did, or at least comparatively to what people assumed he had, based again on how he portrayed himself.
I said, well, hey, let's take a look at his code now. The grift, maybe if I was this YouTuber with 30 subscribers and I had no previous history on YouTube, then you can say maybe I'm just trying to jump on some bandwagon. But I have consistent history of speaking to software engineers, doing code reviews, writing my own code, describing my own code, doing live streams about coding. So it's really just an ad hominem attack to try to bury me and shove all my legitimate criticism into my grave.
I included that clip there because I just think that that's a really important, again, kind of theme throughout all of this. Pirate really likes to, instead of facing a criticism head on and potentially, having an introspective look on himself, he kind of just tries to condemn everything entirely to essentially throw the baby out with the bathwater. And in turn, his audience gets to ignore the drama, but additionally, he never has to reflect, and he can also just throw it away, because why would I ever take advice from someone who is so terrible and so bad? He did it multiple times. In a small way, he did it to me in those DMs. He was like, you're just like a hate chaser. Just look at my Twitter reply. I'm not going to talk to Ross. I'm not going to talk to Ross because he's a used car salesman. He's disingenuous. Like, why would I ever interact with that? And also, which I just love, icing on top of the cake here, he makes a comment that he's like, oh, Coding Jesus should have just reached out to me. He fucking did.
Dude probably should have reached out instead of talking shit.
This part's extremely funny because I actually did reach out. So I was in his YouTube live stream and I said, hey, I'm making a video about you. I wanted him to respond and then we can talk about it. Now, I don't have proof that I did that. You'd have to take my word, but I did message him on his YouTube chat. And within like 3 seconds, when I said, I'm making a video about your code, I got banned and my message disappeared from his stream. So he's not interested in engaging with anybody. He lives in his own fortress. That's why it's so easy for him to say you should have just reached out to me. Because even if he did see that message, he would have never responded anyways. He would have just brushed it off and ignored it. The fact that he didn't respond to it explicitly. It's just a cover for him to say this guy never actually reached out.
Big thing for me is a pattern of behavior. Does somebody do the same thing over and over and over again? And at what point does that become like a part of who they are to such a degree that you can confidently believe and expect that from somebody? His responses back and forth with Coding Jesus about, the coding issues of HeartBound all culminated in FridgeBound. Essentially, Pirate Software was saying, well, one of my viewers was able to get HeartBound to run on a smart fridge. Therefore, the coding issues don't matter. Except HeartBound wasn't running on the smart fridge. The person who set it up was just using the smart fridge as a screen to mirror the game being played off of a laptop. Hello, Quintheo of Pirate Past. For the record, the clip that I'm showing you guys, he showed over and over and over and over again on stream. First part of this video showing how many times that he did that. But this is that smart fridge clip in question. So he's taking a power bank, looks like a Raspberry Pi, and a laptop here. Yo. Now, additionally, I wanted to include this part here as we kind of like bring in the coding part of this to a close with HeartBound. To some degree, I see a different perspective than the one that Coding Jesus had shown me in the coverage that we had gone over together. Don't get me wrong. I think it's important to recognize the fact that Pirate Software, who seemed to have kind of, elevated himself in a way that made it seem like he would be more competent when it comes to creating a game, coding it, developing it, etc. For me, the far more important aspect to this was the fact that there was a game that had been in development for 7 years that wasn't done yet. And from the perspective of a consumer, if the game runs well enough, if it runs at the correct benchmarks for most computers, like 60 FPS, I don't necessarily give a shit how badly the code is. Maybe to a developer who understands it, that is a horrific thing to look at, but for me, I just want the people that have, put money into supporting the game, supporting Pirate Software, to get the full product that they had purchased. Obviously, you take that gamble when you're, purchasing into an early access to a beta, obviously. But when it comes down to him, scrubbing his code, making it cleaner, any of these other issues, I don't necessarily think that he would have to do that. I think many of the people that had purchased the game, just want it to be done. And so for me, I don't think it was necessarily as important. I think it was educational that we got to learn about the coding aspects of it. But I think at the end of the day, him just getting it done, or I should say, focusing on the writing, because the writing's the real issue, I don't really have an issue with that. That's from the perspective of a consumer more than a coder. Interested to hear what you guys think, but continuing on. This leads us into the calm before the storm, so to speak. That's not really what it is, but I made a video called Pirate Software is Starting to Spiral. In this video, I went into detail covering some of the different people that are in his Discord that were trying to talk Pirate off a cliff. He was very clearly very interested in rebutting every single thing that came out about him, and, in doing so, kept creating more drama. One of the more interesting messages I'd seen him post, going to be real for the people in the back who don't get it, you know where this road of attacks and well poisoning ends? It ends with shutting down company and firing everyone if they manage to poison enough people. It ends with no longer being able to support the ferret rescue unless I can snag a job that supports it. People think this is some ego trip shit. Fuck no, I have people to take care of. Expertly separating himself and deflecting any blame that would be brought to himself to all of the people that are hating him. And we see people responding to him in the Discord multiple times. For this instance here, I think you're giving them satisfaction by even reacting to it. Other people responding to him, like countering this, is timing out and banning. Talking about it is just gonna rile up trolls more. Additionally, at this time, Pirate Software had started putting up a ban counter, and every time that a ban went through on his stream, it was making the number go up, and people were trying to shoot for 1,000 at least a day. Someone actually comments on this saying those people are coming here or to the stream and seeing you show numbers of bans you have. Without context, it looks like boasting. Trolls are giving that context already, and gamifying it with ban announcements and counters is just encouragement. You're gonna fight this fight for the rest of your career this way. Like, these were people in his Discord that were just generally being rational and trying to look out for the guy, and he was not having any of it. The thing that I found most interesting is that someone with what seemed to be a legitimate gripe had come in and kind of shared this issue, and they had been a viewer of him for quite some time. Talks about how the amount of content is disappointing for how long it's been in development. Someone tried to like push back, and he responds with, "By the time the game is done, my son will be in college." And I might be misunderstanding, but are you saying it's not even halfway done? This is the person responding. I like Thor, but at this point I feel like my money has been wasted. Between buying the game, buying HeartBound merch, subscribing to his Twitch and YouTube, it just doesn't feel like I'm supporting an indie dev with a dream as much as a Twitch streamer with a side project. Its priorities have changed drastically. This is how Pirate responded to this person. Like genuinely what seems to be the most genuine, honest criticism that's just raw, that's just real. How would you respond to something like that? Some like, I would say, objective criticism in voicing their concerns with you. Now I'm going to show you the direct opposite of whatever you just came up with. Pirate Software responds to them saying, "Doomer detected. Honestly, if all you're going to do is doom post, just wait for me to be done and stop busying yourself with it. I'm literally writing right now, lol." Then it looks like that message got deleted. They might have been banned from the Discord. I'm not sure, but that message gets deleted. And then Pirate responds to it, "Good faith criticism is not claiming that your son will be in college by the time the game comes out. It's just stating things as raw and aggressive as possible while being an ass about it. Fuck's sake." That's what Pirate got out of that message. Brother's just telling you that life has moved on for him and that his kid has grown up into a fucking adult. He's trying to make a point, brother. And this is just rich. Pirate Software then says, "You can just be like, hey man, when is this coming out? Not writing a novel about all the imaginary shit that is going to happen before it does." I'm sorry, is Pirate Software critiquing or policing someone else and how they're using tact? A dude that can't help but be arrogant even in the face of a therapist calling him out for being arrogant? A man who can't help but respond to every single criticism as condescendingly as possible? He's the guy giving lessons on tact in his Discord? For me, this was the tipping point, looking back now, of me kind of recognizing that Pirate Software is incapable of taking this criticism. Not because he can't take criticism, but because he's incapable of believing that he deserves criticism in some type of way. He might say that he's able to handle criticism, things like that, but his behavior shows very clearly that there's always a reason that anyone that is giving him any sort of, criticism is wrong. That like there's something about what they're talking about that is fundamentally untrue, which completely, destroys any chance of this criticism being useful or valid. Like this is the type of ego that I don't even know if therapy actually helps. I don't know if Pirate or anyone that is like this can get to a point where they would actually be able to, engage with therapy in a helpful or useful way. But leading up after this starts the third final major plot point of this whole thing. I put out the video, Pirate Software just got caught. TLDR, I found out through someone mentioning it and finding it in my Discord that some dude had posted on Twitter this screenshot from Pirate Software's stream where he was talking with Kronos. The exchange made it clear that Kronos was buying bits for the hype train and buying subs for the hype train to keep it moving along. This appeared to be, especially initially at the time, as something pretty bad, which I would still say is pretty bad. Although I said that there might have been alleged, breaches of Twitch terms of service or potential legal ramifications from this kind of getting caught out. But after speaking with experts in both fields, which we'll be getting into, doesn't appear that ended up actually spelling legal or Twitch consequences on either side of that. I was clear about this in my follow-up videos, but also wanted to say it here as well. Again, too, shout out to Scorpion from MK. They are a member of Kiwi Farms, and they were the individual that had the VOD saved from this situation. Truly, this video would not have been more than just a speculation on this screenshot even being real without this individual having this VOD archived. And of course, it shows up in the VOD as well, this screenshot, and we're able to verify that it is indeed Pirate Software and his messages with Kronos. Now, I think with the legal stuff out of the way, the biggest other issue is that this was very clearly done under wraps. They were trying to be deceptive. Kronos had done it on an alt account, Serendipitous Bean. He also did a lot of donations under his own name with, I believe it was tier 3 subs he had also put with his main account. On top of that, just to add to the deceptive bit, Pirate knew Serendipitous Bean was the alt account, and he acted like he didn't know who it was.
Serendipitous Bean with 50,000 bits said IRL friend of Kronos and excited that they are now free from corporate.
I know.
Love your stream and what you do for people here. There aren't many cool or supportive streamers left once they get big like this. Stay cool, bud, and tell Kronos that Ben sends their regards.
I'm sorry you had to know Kronos in real life,
with
just like me.
500 bits said, when is Yar pregnant man going to be real?
He had to do a little glazing for his boss, but oh my god, that was painful, knowing now that that is actually Kronos. Now, to kind of add a bit more detail to this hype train fiasco, I just want to include a few clips of me covering it when I had Legal Mindset on as the lawyer. Now, he said that there were possible legitimate legal gripes because consumers were being deceived. You know, they thought that this was a organic hype train that was receiving donations from, you know, complete strangers, things like that, you know, with Kronos being on an alt account, things like that. But in this, I also point out that not only did they say that, you know, he was never reimbursed, he was not reimbursed for donating these subs, we also find out that just a few months before that, they said publicly that half of the Giga Train hype train that they were doing was going to the staff, which means he was getting reimbursed. He was getting reimbursed a piece of that pie that the team was getting from half of the hype train. He was incentivized to keep it moving. Secondly, a reason that Kronos had given for why he was using an alt account is that people were getting harassed for donating onto pirate streams, something that was happening more and more since the start of the OnlyFangs drama from earlier that year. Except that made absolutely no sense. My biggest issue with this argument that he made, which was he didn't want to get harassment, is number one, he did 100 tier 1 subs on his personal account before he did the others on the alternate account. So his name was already there. They deleted the VoDs after. So in two separate ways, you tried to in two separate ways. Number one, it would have been corrected because the VoDs were deleted. And number two, the first thing you did was donate 100 tier 1 subs under your main account. So that doesn't add up with what you were trying to prevent. That does not explain, like, your behavior is not matching up with the excuse you're giving. Right? I guess then that makes it feel more like an excuse.
Yeah, exactly. No, it absolutely does. And once again, this is unnecessary. I think overall as a construction, it's unnecessary deception. Like, this could have been all mitigated by just being upfront with it. And I understand. Look, you know, harassment in certain circumstances can be very real and very serious. You know, and there are certain circumstances where, yes, you want to prevent that and you want to take measures to do that. But in this particular case, I don't think it was necessary for Pirate, especially ex post facto after the fact, to try to hide the ball.
Last thing I wanted to include here, I had a DM exchange with Kronos where he sent me this screenshot of him chatting with Pirate leading up to what we saw screenshotted during the hype train. And he's got this really cool message that just kind of explains what he plans to do with these tier 100 drops, all this stuff. And it just, you know, perfectly explains away the situation. And down below, it says edited. I asked Kronos to hover over that because if you hover over it on desktop, you're able to see when it was edited. Kronos had been on vacation at the time that we were exchanging these DMs. So I figured, hey, you know, once he gets back, he can show. But he never ended up doing this. As a matter of fact, he unfriended me a few short days later, and to this day has still never confirmed that. I just think that it would be a huge help, or I should say it would have been a huge help for him and Pirate to just verify that, give an extra bit of credibility that was always above board and that everything I had said in my video or any suggestions or alleged possibilities for how this ran just all would have been, you know, destroyed. But alas, to this day, we will not know. Now, to kind of close this bit off here, I'm doing this a little out of order, but this originally was supposed to come sooner, but we'll get to why that didn't happen. I had the privilege to interview Cynthia Hall, not related to Jason Hall, Mr. Pirate Software, and she worked with him at Blizzard, had some very interesting, you know, information to share, as well as the fact that she was his roommate for a very brief period of time. Now, I had actually done this video in two separate parts. In the first part, I spoke to Pirate Software's ex-roommate. I focused on the Twitch side of things because they worked at Twitch and had a huge help in creating and writing the policies that existed. And I actually ended up speaking with her in this first video about the terms of service potential breaking, where she kind of like point by point showed that it wouldn't actually be a TOS break. This entire video was truly just showing how I was wrong about the points that I had brought up about him potentially breaking Twitch terms of service. And I own up to that and am honest about it at the very end. And she also shows proof that she was, you know, working with him at Blizzard, and that leads into the second one. So to my complete and utter dismay, I was wrong about every single Twitch terms of service. Where I thought it could be broken, it ends up being that the reason that those were written the way that they were was for a completely different reason. And honestly, I kind of expected that I'd at least be wrong on a couple of them, but maybe I guess not all of them. But it's good to know why these terms of service were written the way they were. Moreover, why there probably isn't going to be any consequences sent Pirate's way from Twitch. Now, in the second part of this interview, we focused on her experience, working alongside Thor, or actually working as his superior, as well as being his roommate. And you learn a lot, especially how nepotism for sure got him his job. He was slacking off, literally just browsing Reddit instead of doing his job. He also was freaking out and screaming at coworkers during a fun League of Legends thing for children. It was like a children's charity drive. She goes into talking about how they became roommates, and then we hear a lot about why they stopped being roommates and a bit of the info as to the state of the room that he was occupying and how it was left.
I'm not a privacy invader, but he had left the door open to his bathroom, and I just looked inside because it was in the hallway. It was like a hallway to go through to the bathroom, and then his bedroom, which the door was closed, so I did not go in there, and then my bedroom. So I just turned on the hall light and I peeked in there, and the place was a fucking sty. He had never put up a shower curtain in the bathroom. There was ashy stuff everywhere, gray ash kind of looking spots everywhere, including in the shower, on the floors, on the countertops. The toilet it had been a fucking week, and I could not understand the state of things. He had cleaned nothing, so I had to clean everything by hand. There was I don't know what on the walls in his bedroom, and you're just gonna have to take my word for this. I don't know if it was snot or something else, just wiped here and there on the walls, and more of the random gray stuff, just spots and things. It's very clearly not smoke ash, because there was no odor of it or anything.
That is just strange. That sounds like a cryptid.
It was very strange.
Again, that is just the skinny of it. It's a lot of really gross stuff and a lot of him just not behaving like an adult would. Now, to cap off the drama as it comes to a close with this entire, month-long, Pirate Software saga, Pirate Software would go on to make a few posts in his Discord accusing me of doxing him in my Discord server. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is when the Milkman outfit came to be. Now, firstly, not a big deal. What's up, Milkman Quintheo? He covers, the hype train drama that I had brought up, and that was some of the messages that he had. He then follows up with the infamous, now the 1-2 punch against this bullshit. Quintheo's Discord has people actively doxing me in it. His moderation team is aware of this and have been encouraging it as shown in the images. They've also been digging into Shay and her job as a secondary attack vector. They bring up Shelf Related, who's one of my mods, who is a mod asking for doxing info directly. Now, this is an hour-long video where I go piece by piece showing how everything that he said was wrong. My favorite part of it, though, some of the screenshots that he had provided in this were literally just off of his Twitter. They were pictures either saved or screenshotted directly from Pirate's own Twitter. I'm assuming that somebody else had censored the images and let him know what was being depicted or something, because for the life of me, I can't believe that he saw the own pictures that he had taken himself and thought that he was getting doxxed in that way. I don't need to rehash everything, but for the sake of clarifying things, there was one dude that was touting around and he had shown a picture that seemed to be a picture of Pirate's mailbox, except they had taken it from Google Earth. They censored everything on it, and they were flexing in the Discord that they had figured out his location based off of, his original mailbox picture with the rain patterns. This guy ended up getting banned, and although it isn't doxing as they weren't providing any, actual tangible information of Pirate or any of his address, anything like that, it's still really fucking weird, and I just don't think gloating about your ability to find people and where they live, especially when they're a public figure, is very epic of you. And as for my 1-2 punch against his bullshit, I admittedly leak our DMs. Because just a few weeks prior, I had written to Pirate Software letting him know that one of the people that was watching my content found information that could lead to a dox for Pirate. I censor out the information, but you can see halfway through it, regardless of if I like/respect you or vice versa, swatting is fucked, and I just needed to make sure you saw this in case it is an actual problem. Again, this has nothing to do with drama, and whether you believe it or not, I'm genuinely sorry that you've been swatted. Wouldn't wish it on anybody. anybody. Now, I gotta say, to have these messages in your DMs and then expect that I would have been okay with this guy getting doxxed on my server, for him to have that belief, honestly, I don't really blame him. He was probably really upset because of everything that was happening. But at the same time, crazy, because he knew I had this. I fucking wrote it to him. Now that, for the most part, wraps up that entire saga of drama that we went through. And now I think it's time to answer the question of, well, where is Pirate Software now? More specifically, I wanted to take a look at what happened with his stats, his subs, his YouTube subs, video analytics, things like that. And, well, let's take a look. Using view stats here, we can see just for the year from 2025, which is pretty much the start of that drama leading down to where we are now. He was at almost 2.6 million subs, and over the course of, well, you can see when it really hits here, leading up to today, he is down to 1.9 million subs. And it doesn't look like he had a positive moment, but the slope has reduced in terms of angle. And over the last year, you can see a drop in 660,000 subs. And also, notably, a drop in 1.3 billion less views than his other year. Now, a good reason for this is that he actually ended up deleting or privating all of his VODs during the drama stuff, and he's also recently actually removed a VOD from a previous day. Unfortunately, we didn't have an archive of it. If anyone watching does, let me know, send it to me. Think there might be something in it. But he also just recently deleted some of his Ashes of Creation videos, which also dropped that view number down a bit. There were also some changes YouTube was doing, so a bit of that reduction in views also makes sense, given that they were also treating like privated views, things like that differently, and were removing them from channels like full view counts. But if we jump over to Twitch Tracker here, we can also see that over the course, he has dropped over 300,000 followers on Twitch over the course of this year. So I just need to remove that. And he has been in negative follower growth since that start of the year back in February, it looks like. Yeah, and it just keeps going down. And you can see here too, after all of this had settled down, there hasn't been much of a jump back, but you can see here he took a bit of a break. And you can see the viewer count has dropped down to as low as it looks like couple thousand to 2,000 to the, I mean, even after the OnlyFangs stuff, we're seeing, 7, 10,000, but he is starting to make a little bit of a grow back. It was looking like he was getting about 2,000 down to 1,000, but he started building back up here, 3K, some extra ones here. He's been doing well with the Helldiver stuff. And if we jump over to his YouTube, we can see here, his videos have been interesting. 1.3K, 1.7, 1.8, around a couple thousand views. He did have a really big one, Ashes of Creation. I think we're familiar with that if you're a fan of this channel. But you can see there's a pretty big jump back to just a couple of months ago here. You can see he originally would post like bigger videos. Now it just seems to be just VODs from games that he's been playing. But you can see from before that, I mean, 256,000 on this video, 140K, 110K, 102. Obviously, the content is different as well. It's just full, VODs of the gameplay that he's doing. So I guess take that with a grain of salt, if you will. But I think a lot of people were under the impression that there was going to be a bounce back. I mean, I kind of was myself. Maybe it'll happen in the following year. I'm less and less confident that something like that is going to happen for him, though, as even just recently, he hasn't changed his behavior. He did the same really dumb stuff in the Ashes of Creation stuff that I'd covered. And I think at this point, he has just kind of ruined the good faith that he had. And I guess the brand of who he was for the people. And I don't think that he's ever going to get that back. He soured so many people's opinion of him, including myself, over the course of this huge controversy. Just incident after incident where he just could not get his ego in check. He got Meat Canyoned. If you're getting a video on you from Meat Canyon, you fucked up. And that would have probably been the one time where I was like, maybe he actually will admit to it and, have some humility and whatnot. And it didn't happen. He changed his profile picture to him from the video for a couple of days and then went back to normal. I don't really know how to end a video like this. I've never done anything this, long form before. I guess to put it all together, Pirate Software is a shining example of exactly what not to do. Even if you are someone that is incapable of swallowing their pride, but you value having your career in this field, I think you can look at what has happened with him and just bullshit the apology just to make it through. It is of my personal belief that Pirate is truly incapable of kind of like learning from these mistakes. I don't think he's capable of even recognizing what he's done as a mistake of any kind. And out of anybody that I've covered or anybody that I've even, watched or observed through other people's content, I have never seen someone who is so consistently, being controlled by their ego to such a degree that I don't believe that for the most part he's acting maliciously or intentionally being deceitful. I think for the most part he just thinks that he's always right and ignores when he gets called out for being wrong. Obviously, there are cases where it seems that, yeah, he was being deceptive on purpose, but I really do think for the most part, he can't really control it. I don't think that makes it any better. I would say for me, it makes me a bit more cynical about someone like him changing and developing into a better person than they were the day before. But again, who am I? I cover content on YouTube wearing a milkman outfit, and I'm not a psychologist. So I guess only time will tell. And, in that time frame, I will be sure to cover if he does something dumb again, which at this point feels like an inevitability. But if you enjoyed this video and want to get it out in front of more people, give this video a like, perchance a hype, subscribe if you're new here, enjoyed the long form content. Hell, maybe this will be a good signal to make more of this kind of stuff. But that does it. Not here to waste more time. I hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys later. Adios. Peace. Bye. Hey, you. Yeah, you. You made it to the end. Don't forget to click on the description link to get that sweet 84% off your subscription with CyberGhost VPN. This application will protect your data while you browse and also give you full access to all blocked content on the internet for $2.03 a month only. Totally risk-free, so check it out. Link in the description.